You ever have that feeling like you're just running on a treadmill? You're working harder and harder, but you're not really getting anywhere? Well, it turns out there's a pretty powerful evolutionary theory that explains that exact feeling. Today, we're going to dive into the fascinating and, yeah, kind of terrifying idea of the Red Queen hypothesis.
So, where does this all begin? Well, not in a sterile biology lab, that's for sure. Our journey actually starts in a world of pure fantasy. The name for this whole scientific concept comes straight from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. And you know what? It perfectly nails the paradox right at the heart of evolution.
And there it is. That's the quote that kicked this whole thing off. The Red Queen is explaining to Alice that in her kingdom, the world itself is moving under your feet. So to actually get somewhere else, you've got to run twice as fast. But just to stay put, you have to run as fast as you can. It's just a brilliant metaphor for a really fundamental truth about life. Okay, so what's the official definition? Well, back in 1973, a biologist named Lee Van Valen came up with this. And what it says is that for any species, evolution isn't some big grand march towards perfection. Not at all. Instead, it's more like a desperate, frantic race just to keep up with everybody else who is also evolving. It's not about being good in some absolute sense. It's about being good enough compared to the competition. This is really the core of the problem, right here. Survival isn't some static goal you can just reach and then, kick back and relax. The goalposts are always moving. Why? Because your predators are getting smarter, your prey is getting faster, and your parasites are getting sneakier. You're not just aiming at a target, you're aiming at a constantly moving target. So how does this actually play out in nature? Well, the engine driving the Red Queen effect is something we call a co-evolutionary arms race. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a relentless, never-ending cycle where competing species are constantly trying to one-up each other. Let's look at the classic example, predator versus prey. So picture this, a group of gazelles, just by chance, gets a little bit faster. That's great for them, but it puts huge pressure on the cheetahs. Now, only the absolute fastest cheetahs can catch dinner, survive, and have kids. So the whole cheetah population gets faster. And just like that, the bar is raised for the gazelles, all over again. It's a cycle that just never, ever stops. But an even crazier arms race happens between hosts and their parasites. I mean, think about it. Parasites like bacteria and viruses reproduce so quickly they can evolve at lightning speed. So a host might develop a great new immune defense, but in just a few generations, the parasite has already figured out a way around it. It's this constant, high-stakes battle of biological wits. And here's the really stark evidence for all this, right from the fossil record. Van Valen found that the chance of a species going extinct doesn't actually go down over time. You'd think a species that's been around for millions of years would be, pretty safe and stable, right? Wrong. The race is so relentless that there's no safe zone. You are always, always running from extinction. Now, this relentless race doesn't just explain why things go extinct. It also helps us solve one of the absolute biggest puzzles in all of biology. What is the point of sex? It sounds like a simple question, but trust me, it's a profound one that has kept scientists scratching their heads for a very long time. I mean, if you think about it from a purely logical numbers point of view, sexual reproduction seems like a pretty terrible strategy. An organism that just clones itself passes on 100% of its genes and can reproduce twice as fast. So why on earth is this inefficient, costly, and super complicated method the dominant one for almost all complex life on Earth? Let's just break down the costs. An asexual organism can literally double its population in the time it takes a sexual one to have a single generation. And with sex, you're only passing on half of your own genes. That's the famous cost of meiosis. Plus, you have to waste all this time and energy finding a partner. Mathematically, it just looks like a losing deal. So what's the answer? Well, as the Red Queen hypothesis would suggest, it all comes back to that constantly moving target. The main benefit of sex isn't about being efficient when times are good. It's about plain old survival in a world that is constantly trying to kill you. Here's how it works, and it's pretty brilliant. Sex is like constantly shuffling a deck of cards. Every single offspring gets a brand new, unique hand of genetic traits. Now, for those super fast-evolving parasites, this is a total nightmare. They might evolve the perfect key to unlock one host's genetic defenses, but that key is completely useless against its brother, or its sister, or its cousin. Sex creates a moving, unpredictable target the parasites just can't keep up. Okay, and here's where this idea gets so powerful, it actually breaks free from biology altogether. The Red Queen's race isn't just about animals and plants. It's a universal principle that describes competition in almost any dynamic system you can think of, including our own modern world. You start looking and you see this pattern everywhere. In business, companies are constantly innovating, not really to get ahead, but just to keep from being left behind. In tech, cybersecurity is a perfect arms race between hackers and defenders. And what about our careers? The skills that made you an expert 5 years ago might just be the baseline expectation today. We all have to keep learning just to stay relevant. So as we start to wrap this up, the main message here is, well, it's both daunting and kind of motivating at the same time. In any competitive world, there is no finish line. There's no point where you can just stop, dust off your hands, and say, okay, I've made it.
So this all leads us to the fundamental rules of the Red Queen's game. The race never ends. Real stability is only possible through constant change. And maybe most importantly, success isn't measured in a vacuum. It's all about how you stack up against everyone else who is also running right alongside you.
And that really brings us to the final thought. This isn't just some abstract theory about fossils or parasites. It's a lens, a new way to understand our own lives, our jobs, our whole society. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. In your world, what race are you running? And are you running fast enough just to stay in the same place?